Meyer, founder and CEO of Amazon solutions provider Envision Horizon.
And I'm Todd Pachowski, Director of Performance Marketing at Envision Horizons. We've teamed up to make the Common Mistakes podcast.
Todd and I meet with business owners, leaders, and investors to discuss common mistakes and other business experiences they've learned from. Tune in every other Tuesday for your dose of business advice. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Common Mistakes, where we talk about mistakes we've made, we've seen, so you don't have to learn the hard way. I'm Laura Meyer.
And I'm Todd Pachowski. Today we have the pleasure of Natalie Mackey joining us on the show. Natalie is a brand builder and a beauty entrepreneur. She began her career in finance, but soon became drawn to growing companies as an operator. In 2015, she launched Winky Lux, which is a fast-to-market brand of whimsical color cosmetics. Natalie's thesis is that beauty is rooted in play, and interacting with products should be, first and foremost, a joyful experience. So Natalie, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. It's really fun to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're going to open it up with my go-to question here, although I'm told you have a few answers to this question, which is, what is some of your biggest mistakes? We won't say one, your only biggest mistake, but what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've made along your career path that really stand out to you that today you are grateful for because you learned so much from that experience?
Totally. I think the biggest mistakes that I've made have usually had to do with people. Some of the best decisions I've made in business have had to do with people too. And the worst ones have had to do with people. So your team is everything. The entire business is just a group of people working towards something. And so the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I don't know that my instincts were as refined. And so they've always been around people that didn't fit our core values, or, didn't have the company's North Star kind of in their mind or their heart as they're growing. And that just encompasses so many mistakes. But those are all the mistakes that I am so grateful for, especially in the beginning, because the stakes were so much lower. And understanding the type of team members you need to grow is such an important skill set. So getting that out of the way in the beginning is a really good thing.
And it's something I think Todd and I can also relate to in a lot of ways. And I actually heard a great quote many years ago that your worst employees aren't actually your lowest performers. It's your mediocre team members, because they do just enough to get by that you justify keeping them on the team. When
100%,
they show those sparks of like, oh, maybe they are, like, maybe they've turned a corner, maybe they are aligned with our core values, and then 2 weeks later something doesn't get followed through on, or whatever it be.
Totally. And I wish I could boil this down to just one mistake, but I mean, I've made the mistake so many times. So I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. And when we were thinking about our core values, one of the most helpful exercises that we did was, what would we fire a top performer for? What would we actually let someone go for if they were a top performer? And it came down to things like, we call it joy in mind, which is our way of saying attitude matters and kindness matters. This idea of having empathy for another person, for approaching things by giving the other person the benefit of the doubt, like a truly, and it's such a generic term, a bad attitude, but someone who has a negative attitude or sort of, can be deleterious to the company, can really just reverberate through the entire organization. So, and it can harm your top performers who are your most valuable. Your team is everything. So if you've got that cliche old saying, one bad apple, but it really, I don't know a better one.
And out of curiosity, what are some of your other core values that you've outlined for Winky Lux?
Oh yeah. So our top one is crown the customer. So everything we do has to do with the customer's happiness, and it's beyond just her happiness. It's the promise that we've made to her to create these pops of joy in her day-to-day life. So someone that would be antithetical to that core value would be someone who didn't care about the customer's journey, or didn't care about her experience with the brand, didn't believe that we would kind of fall all over ourselves to make sure our customer had the best, most wonderful experience. And that really permeates through everything, our wholesale partnerships, our e-com relationships, our customer. The most obvious part is the customer service, right? But that's just the tip of the iceberg of thinking about an organization where the customer kind of comes first, because we interact directly with our end user, and it's a very precious relationship, and it's hard to build that trust over a long period of time, and it's easy to break it.
Natalie, going back to the idea of having good instincts when it comes to hiring, how did you, I assume you've gotten better over time, but how did you sharpen that skill in the 10 years or so since you've started?
A lot of just blood, sweat, and tears and pain. Like, a lot of mistakes. I think the biggest thing that has happened is really being okay with understanding that not even high performers, no one can be sacred if they don't hold the company's core values at heart. So that's been my biggest like skill set that I've honed, I think. And hiring too is still, I think of it as kind of a 70-30 proposition, right? Like if you can really become amazing at, or you have someone in your organization that is amazing at letting go of someone who's a medium performer to make way for top performers, and you're someone that's really good at that, you will probably win against someone who's a better hirer but hangs on to people too long. So that's not my strong suit, I would say. My strong suit is wanting to nurture people and get them to the next level. And I generally, one of the greatest things about being an entrepreneur is that you get to choose the people you work with. It's one of the big highs. You generally choose people that you really think have a lot of potential, and it's hard for your ego and for your sense of self to say, like, I made a mistake. That person is not a top performer. And luckily it hasn't happened that often. But again, we've probably been, one of my challenges is, as I've gotten better at that, I've gotten slower to hire, which sometimes can bite you as well. So I think this is a journey that is lifelong.
Yeah, especially in the hiring market the last 2 years, where candidates, at least from our point of view and experience, some candidates were getting offers in like a week from other companies, where we've implemented a math test in our process. We like to do a panel. So our process is kind of more like a 3-week turnaround, which I still think is a good timeline, but it's interesting. What do you do in your interviewing process to really test or interview for those core values?
It's a really good question. It really comes down to, so the beginning, by the time I meet with someone, they've usually gone through the hiring manager that's working with them, unless they're an executive. And for an executive, it would be nearly impossible for me to make a super quick decision, because I do have to take the time to understand how they think about things and how they operate. And I think we really look for some of those main things. I mean, always curious is another one of our core values. So I think innate curiosity is a prime example of an entrepreneurial mind. Internal entrepreneurs are the other core values. So we hire people that generally own their businesses, and they have a lot of pride. And we have to do that because we're almost 100% remote. We do have an office, but it's really small, and we don't go in there that often. We usually use it for meetings, but it's important when people are all over the country that they are the type of people that are really highly accountable, and that they like that. They like to sort of own their wins and their losses.
It's funny. We interview a lot of, successful entrepreneurs and business owners on this podcast, and the same kind of theme tends to come through on all of our conversations about hiring. And we tend to go into that topic because it's so, important to us at the moment. But people that are kind, people that are accountable, that are resourceful, curious, like you just mentioned, those themes seem to come together in a lot of our conversations.
Totally.
Maybe it's so hard to find because it's what everyone's trying to hire for.
I do think there are different.
No,
there are different. No, it's probably top talent. There is a war out there for top talent. But there are different roles where what you enjoy needs to be completely different. There are people who really, really, really enjoy customer facing roles, who really love education. I mean, we have creators on our team who spend all day long creating videos on TikTok. that would be my sort of form of hell. So I don't know, everybody has different things that they're really good at and they really enjoy. I think that really can be different based on the role. But when it comes to those like core values, I think that those all have to be the same. That sense of accountability, that sense of curiosity. So you're right. It's hard out there. We're lucky to have some of the best people I know. So it's great.
And I agree with that. I was with you in Nashville, got to spend an evening with the team. It's a great crew.
Thank you. They're a lot of fun. They're really fun.
I was just going to dig into, I would like to, I introed Winky Lux. What gave you the idea, and maybe you can elaborate on this too. I read an article about how you left the financial world and started a tech-focused marketplace that would advise consumers on what products to purchase based on a quiz. Did I summarize that correctly?
That's correct. You nailed it.
Can you talk about that and how that catapulted into Winky Lux?
Sure. I mean, maybe that might be the genesis mistake, right? That might be the mistake that really launched the company. So my business partner and I were really excited about the beauty industry. I was and still am a complete beauty junkie. And we thought there was so much opportunity in the space. And this was 7 years ago. We thought there would be an incredible opportunity to create a marketplace that was married to a quiz. So you would go online and you would take this whole quiz and it would tell you what products to buy. And at that time, marketplaces were really, really hot. I mean, this was 2014 when every marketplace was getting tons of funding and they were the future. Now cut to about 80-90% of them have gone out of business. But at the time, it was a really hot technology. Everybody wanted to talk about it. We thought it was going to be just so disruptive. So we started building this thing out. We got it into beta and we ended up doing this big focus group. And we started to interview tons and tons of women who were, our core demographic. And we started at colleges. And so it ended up being about 200 women that we interviewed. And it turned out that no one really cared about our marketplace. They really didn't think that it solved the problem. They found that shopping for beauty products was actually a joy. It wasn't a burden the way that shopping for clothes was. And so we decided to pivot, and there's a little bit of context that's needed there, which is that when you're building a marketplace, you're going to take affiliate fees and that's going to be your revenue source. But if you really want to highly monetize it, you can have your own brand. And I knew a couple of manufacturers. And so we decided that we would go and work with a manufacturer I knew really well and do a private label brand. And that would be how we filled holes in the marketplace. And so as we were greening up this brand, which was not it didn't exist. It was basically a bunch of 3D renderings on a page. And we started to pepper it into our fake marketplace. And during that time, we were interviewing all of these women and we were getting a lot of themes in their feedback. Some of the themes were, I really like luxury cosmetics, but I can't really afford them. I have my one really precious Charlotte Tilbury lipstick. And then these are all my L'Oreal mascaras that I don't really love, but they're actually really good, which was interesting because we actually knew that most mascaras were made by the same 5 factories and a lot of them were very similar. So it was funny that the consumer almost had this shame about buying a really well-priced item that was completely effective. So that was one theme. The other theme was she really liked this idea of Winky Lux, which was the brand that we had greened up. And the brand was an afterthought. So it was a blessing because we weren't that precious about how we built it. We were really excited about the idea of a really maximalist brand because everything we saw in the industry was really minimalist. I mean, Glossier had launched the year before. Everyone was sans serifs and, creams and millennial pink, and everything was just very, of the day. It was very, very minimalism. It was kind of that red antler vibe from 2013. And we went for total maximalism. And we were allowed to be so fearless because it wasn't supposed to be the biggest part of the company, but it turned out it was something people really liked and they were interested in. So that was the original mistake, was thinking we were going to do a marketplace. The best thing we ever did was pivot and not listen to some of our advisors who all said, whatever you do, just don't start a brand.
I love that pivot. I love the stories that don't go as intended.
And it's so funny to me. I hear a lot of entrepreneurial journeys, and you can kind of tell they usually fall into 2 camps. One is, here's all the problems that we had. Here's how we overcame them. And the other one is we had this great idea and then all the money just flew at us and everything was up, up, up. And I find myself not only not really relating to that story, but also not really believing it. So I think like building something is a journey. I don't know that anyone could build a house without any problems. Building a business is similarly full of ups and downs, but it's a lot of fun.
It is. It's constant problem solving.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Yeah. If you like the highs and highs and the lows.
I like to joke with my husband, like at the end of the day, when he's like, what's for dinner? I'm like, I've made too many decisions for one day. I have decision fatigue. You decide. Like, I've already tackled enough. I'm not tackling what's for dinner.
Yep. Totally. Even what I wear in the morning, sometimes I'm like, I just need a uniform.
Well, that's why Steve Jobs, he always did the black turtleneck, like what you're rocking now.
Oh my God, look at this. On trend.
He didn't want to think about it. Yeah. I actually think I got the term decision fatigue from some Steve Jobs article I read years ago.
It would make sense. It would make sense.
So Natalie, once you decided to make that pivot, what was it, that unintentional market research that gave you confidence to think that you could take Winky Lux into this overly saturated and pretty competitive market?
Yeah, I think maybe a little humble narcissism or something. Like we knew enough. We knew enough to be dangerous. So thought we were really going to be super smart on manufacturing a beauty brand. And of course, there's been lots of blood and treasure in between getting to where we are now. But I saw something that I wanted that wasn't in the market. And so I just kept clinging to that. And then there were all of these women who had similar sentiment around what was missing for them. And a lot of it was around the feeling of luxury that was fun, that wasn't so serious, that was also accessibly priced. Everything in mass at the time was really, there was all this marketing on the outer packaging. It was packaged in plastic. It just looked really gross. And it wasn't something that you felt good when you pulled it out of your bag and used it. It just didn't feel that great. And so we thought, there's really no reason that you can't have a luxury product and feel, because the truth is the truth. There are definitely lots of variations of quality in the beauty space, but there is a threshold of quality and it's not always correlated to price. So there are lots of high luxury brands that have some pretty bad quality, and there's some really inexpensive brands that have great quality. And it really is on a brand by brand and product by product basis. And we knew enough about that to know that there was opportunity there to create stuff that was really gorgeous, that was approachable.
And there's no question your merchandising is gorgeous. Like I love when you open the packaging, like you have all the fun prints on the inside. It's definitely a fun experience. So I want to bring up a collaboration that you did earlier this year with Arby's, because Applebees. Sorry, wrong A restaurant. That's my bad. But I want to talk about it because we've obviously seen a lot of brands do collaborations, whether it's within the industry or I've seen companies do collaborations with Dunkin' Donuts and Taco Bell and some other restaurant vendors as well. And curious, what were your learnings from that experience? Because I'm sure it was an interesting one.
Oh my gosh. One of the learnings was when there are so many people involved, you want the bad learnings. The good learnings were that doing something completely unexpected can be so disruptive in the industry. We got 1 billion media impressions on that.
Yeah.
The TikTok video had almost 10 million views. As of recently, 10 million views. There was so much chatter in the industry about it because no one had ever made a barbecue flavored lip gloss before. Probably for good reason, but we were like, we're doing this. This is going to be real fun. Yeah.
I love it.
It was super risky. And turned out it paid off. It was like a 60-40 love hate. There were people who were horrified by it, but we really held tight to this idea that you have to push the envelope and do interesting, cool stuff. And it just, otherwise, what's the point? And it sold out very quickly. It's just such a crazy, fun thing to do. The harder learnings were Applebee's is a massive, really awesome organization. But it's huge. And they have a big advertising agency that was our partner in this. And there's just a lot of people, and we're so fast. Everything we do is so fast. And we didn't even realize how fast we were until we were working with a really, really behemoth organization. We realized how long things take. So it was pretty wild. We're working with their food scientists. We were shipping products. First, we were shipping back wing sauces back and forth in mason jars, like FedExing them all over the country to our lab, to our chemists, to our PD team, to our marketing team. And then we were shipping back like samples of products that we were making that matched the flavor profiles. And so the products had things like garlic and basil in them. It was a lip gloss that has all of this crazy stuff in it. And it really actually tastes exactly like barbecue sauce, like buffalo sauce, like honey pepper sauce. I mean, it is wild. And so it was crazy to see how long it took. Usually when we have an idea like that, we can get it out the door in 6 months. This was about a year to a year and a half from inception to actually getting it out the door. And in the meantime, amazingly, Applebee's blew up from a cultural standpoint. They were the first, I think they were the only restaurant to be in both a hip hop song and a country song, like huge hits at the same time. So they definitely have an incredible relationship with Gen Z. I grew up in a small town, so I remember going to Applebee's all the time. And I think there's just something really nostalgic and fun about the brand. And so those were our learnings. Our learnings were, it seems easy until you're in it.
And because it took so long, that obviously then required more resources from your team. Should you do another collaboration in the future, how would you maybe structure it differently?
You know, collaborations are really opportunistic for us. We don't have them set on our marketing calendars. We generally spend our time focusing on our hero products and just talking to our customers about those. But then once in a while, something really cool will come up and we'll get really excited about it. We did a collaboration with Pokey, the largest female gamer. So we generally steer clear of the traditional collaborations, which for better or for worse, they just never felt like us. We love our influencer partners. We're obsessed with them, but we prefer to just be talking about our hero beauty products with them. When we're going to make something completely new, we want to attack a new audience. We want to have a reason for the industry to talk about it outside of just beauty. And I wish I could say there was more of like a thoughtful filter that it goes through, but really it's kind of a, wow, this is a really cool thing. Let's try this.
That's the beauty of being nimble, right? And that's what makes it exciting. And I love the lesson here that, high risk, high reward, that yeah, maybe 40% of people, like, that was kind of polarizing, right? That there were some people who just really did not like it. I think I remember seeing something on, I don't know if it was Diet Prada or Estee Laundry or one of those Instagram accounts, but they were like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree. If you're not willing to push boundaries, what's the fun in that?
Totally. And what has really, there was a lot of food collaborations. Most of them had to do with color stories, which is fine. It's fine, but we've seen a lot of it. Like, we've just kind of seen that. And I think doing something that actually tasted just like the product, and a product that was completely unexpected, was wild. We did our launch party at the Applebees in New York in Times Square, and the team at the Applebees they were freaking out about the products, and we were testing them against the wings, and just to see the excitement on the ground of how unusual and bizarre and weird and fun this whole thing was, it made it really worth it. But there were definitely times throughout the whole thing where we're like, whoop, I hope people are okay with this. When someone gets this, I hope they realize this is a barbecue flavored lip gloss. It tastes just like barbecue sauce. It's not colored like barbecue sauce. It is, but it's like, the buffalo one, which is my favorite, actually tastes exactly like buffalo sauce. And when I put it on, you can kind of smell it. Like, my husband can smell it from across the room. Like,
hey, well, maybe this is the new trend. Instead of fruity lip glosses, it's all about the savory.
I love it. Is this a limited edition, or are they still available?
It is. I think we have some in our press and our archives. We could get you some, Todd.
Let's do it. Yeah, I love the big, bold bets. And I think that's something like even Bezos from Amazon, like a lot of his success was built on taking these huge risks on big ideas that aren't going to kill the business per se. But if they win, they're going to win big. And it sounds like that's kind of what happened with Winky Lux and Applebees.
Totally.
I want to know just about, if we can talk some operational stuff, how important for you, I mean, going through the pandemic, but then just in general, how important is it to have redundancy in your supply chain, in your manufacturers, and I guess for that matter, in your exposure of the brand to potential customers, and whether it's retail, online channels, et cetera?
Oh, these are good questions, Todd.
It's a big question, I know, sorry.
Yeah, important and not so important, to answer your question. It's really important. The diversification across the board is pretty important. It wasn't so much before the pandemic, and now we've really seen how that has completely changed. We have a really big business with Target. We're in almost every Target in the country with 4 feet, if not more. And we're in a lot of Ultas. We're in about 500 Ultas. We have a new big retail partner that we're announcing at the beginning of the year. And that's really great. And Amazon has been an amazing, to give y'all a shout out. Y'all have been great partners there. It was a real test. I feel like the teams either collapsed or they shined during the pandemic, and ours luckily really shined. We already had a fairly diverse manufacturing base, and that came from not being thoughtful about it or being geniuses looking forward. It really came from a working capital need. So it was just a happy accident that we had a ton of manufacturers. And the reason we have so many manufacturers is because when we first started, we had no venture funding. We didn't take venture money for 2 years. And we still have taken very little comparative to our size. We had to have factories that were willing to really bet on us and give us amazing terms. A lot of times the story in our industry is, I knew one factory, I went to that one factory, I had a great relationship with them, and I made everything there. That's awesome. Good for you. The problem with that is that you probably either they were a really small factory that had no way of scaling up, or they were a really big factory and you were probably not their numero uno customer, if that makes sense. So when we were really starting to build the brand and looking to find manufacturers, and different manufacturers are good for different things too. There isn't really one manufacturer that kills it in every category. I think we met with 50 manufacturers. We went to China, we went to Korea, I went to Europe, we went to California, we went all up and down the New Jersey manufacturing corridor. There's a big corridor in Long Island. There's a lot of beauty manufacturers out there. And the reason we did it was not because we were just so smart. It was because we had to find factories that were at the intersection of both high quality and also were willing to take a real chance on us. And by chance, if a factory produces your product because you pay them in advance a year before you get the product, like that's not really taking a chance on you. That's just making a product for you. We needed to find partners that were willing to be flexible with terms, that were willing to make lower minimum order quantities. And so it took a lot to find that. And because of that, we actually had a really diverse network, and we knew a lot of factories when the pandemic hit, and we had a lot of problems with getting stuff first out of China, then out of the US, then out of Europe. So it was kind of this like domino effect of all kinds of problems. And 95% of all packaging comes from China. So even if a product says it's made in the US, it's filled in the US, the packaging is going to come from China. So that was our happy accident, was that because of that, we were able to be pretty nimble when everything went down.
Yeah, and I think today, maybe given that happy accident that occurred, you now are probably in a better place where you can use that size and growth as a little more leverage to get the right terms and relationships with the suppliers that you do use.
And it's still a challenge. I mean, we'll have blue sky stuff that our team is working on. They'll find an amazing co-packer for it, and we'll have to kill the product sometimes because we don't have the right partnership with that factory, or we can't get the right terms. I mean, we have big, retail is a huge part of our business. Wholesale, our retail partners make up the vast majority of our business. So Target, Ulta, and even Amazon. And as you all know, no one gets paid the day that the product hits. You have terms, everyone has terms. So we need factories that are going to be flexible on some of that. And that's the way we've been able, those relationships are why we've been able to grow without raising boatloads of capital.
Well, I think a lesson from this too is even if you aren't in sales, you are always selling, especially as an entrepreneur, whether it's selling in the future success of the brand to retailers, but also your manufacturing partners.
Totally. If someone's not bought in on the dream, it's going to be really hard when things go wrong or you have to shift it around if they don't believe you're going to be a big part of their business.
Well, awesome. Well, Natalie, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it. I know you're busy. Where is the best place for our listeners to either find Winky Lux or to connect with you directly?
Winky Lux, come see us on Instagram and TikTok, where we do all of our education, all of our new drops, all of our new launches are all there, or winkylux.com, where we have really fun exclusives. And then for me, I mean, I guess the gram is really not.
We'll catch you on the gram.
I'm probably on there way too much. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really, shameless shout out for you guys. It's really, you've been a great partner, and Amazon is such a substantial business for us at this point. And that's really, we really have to tip our hat to you. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it. And honestly, I think our partnership probably works so well because we also have similar core values, bringing it full circle to our opening discussion.
Totally. All right, guys. Thank you for having me, and see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Common Mistakes. If you're not yet subscribed, be sure to follow us and visit envisionhorizons.com to sign up for our weekly newsletter with all the latest Amazon news and expert advice. For Amazon sellers looking for more support, check out our Amazon brand management platform, My Horizons, and sign up for a free trial. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you on the next episode of Common Mistakes.